I don't know how to explain this without sounding crazy, but I think she already knows somehow. Before I hit record, before these words even reach you, she already felt it. You ever get that eerie sense that your future has been listening, quietly aligning itself long before you believed it would? That's how this feels. Like parallel lines that swore they'd never meet, suddenly bending toward each other without force. Not logic, not coincidence, just timing. Maybe the heart knows before the mind catches up. Maybe trust isn't built in the visible moments. Maybe it starts in silence, in those unseen connections that pull two lives closer without reason. And the more I sit with it, the more I see it everywhere, in signals, in pauses, in the way certain words hit differently when they're meant for you. And I can't help but ask, what if proof doesn't come after faith? What if it is faith? It's strange how calm I feel right now. You'd think realization should come with shock, with that rush of confusion or disbelief, but no, it landed softly like I knew all along this was coming. I just didn't know when. It's like waiting for a signal and suddenly realizing you were the signal all this time. That's what it feels like. Alignment disguised as ordinary coincidence. I caught it in the smallest details, in the way a sentence stumbled into my mind as though someone whispered first, in the way her silhouette shows up in my dreams, not as fantasy, but as memory. You know that feeling when something familiar walks into the future, when it feels like déjà vu, but deeper, more intentional. That's where I'm living now. Not in fantasy, not in guessing, but in quiet knowing. The truth is, love isn't something I chase anymore. I used to think it was about effort, the grand gestures, the calculated timing, the perfect version of myself. But when something real approaches, effort fades. Instead, you begin listening. You start seeing the signals you used to ignore. The repeating moments, the meanings hidden in coincidence, the peace inside the impatience. But here's what nobody told me. Faith doesn't always announce its arrival. Sometimes it shows up disguised as uncertainty, and the only proof you get is the way your heart won't shut up about it. That's what happened to me. I started noticing how certain decisions, tiny irrelevant ones, started aligning too precisely to be random. It was like invisible code running behind my life, orchestrating tiny overlaps until I couldn't deny the pattern. I've spent years studying alignment from a technical lens, systems syncing, orbit stabilizing, algorithms predicting, but emotional alignment, that's something else. It's when two timelines, two people, evolve separately yet somehow maintain the same rhythm, like music that doesn't touch but still harmonizes. Have you ever felt that? Like your heart's been rehearsing for someone it hasn't met yet? That's what I mean when I say she already knows. It's not prophetic, it's not magic, it's resonant, as if part of her frequency already tuned into mine before the signal reached the surface, like her intuition was waiting, downloading something invisible, preparing her to recognize what neither of us could articulate yet. Wait before you scroll. Hear this. When people say trust the process, they rarely mention how lonely it feels to actually do it. Because trusting the unseen means walking blind, listening to a rhythm others can't hear. They'll call it delusion. They'll laugh at your certainty. But I've learned faith isn't loud. It's often quieter than fear. It whispers instead of screams. It stays when logic leaves. And love, real love, moves the same way. It doesn't chase or demand or threaten. It simply knows. It carries this deep unspoken calm, as though time itself is trying to keep a promise. I see that now, the way life bends to meet those who finally stop begging for proof. You see, proof is just hindsight in disguise. Faith is what comes before it. There was a morning, I remember it clearly. I was half awake, half lost in thought, and this sentence appeared in my mind. She's already felt you. No context, no reason, just those words. I almost brushed it off, but something in me froze because deep down, I knew this wasn't imagination. It was connection. Early, subtle, but unmistakably real. And from that day, I started behaving differently. I spoke into the lens not like I was performing, but like she was listening. Every word since then has carried that invisible intimacy. Tell me, have you ever felt the presence of someone before you met them? That strange gravity pulling you towards something you can't define. You start recognizing signs that others dismiss as coincidence. But your soul remembers. It leans forward. It listens. That's the space I live in now, between logic and faith, between presence and prophecy. And it's taught me something crucial. Alignment doesn't require control. It requires surrender. I used to force everything, outcomes, timelines, even emotions. But love doesn't negotiate with your deadlines. It arrives when your ego quiets. It bends when you finally stop trying to direct it like a project. I think that's what unseen alignment truly means. Accepting you're being guided by a current you didn't design, but were always meant to follow. But here's the twist I didn't expect. When you begin trusting this higher synchronization, the loneliness doesn't vanish. It transforms. It becomes sacred. Every silent day starts to feel charged. Every minute alone becomes preparation. I stopped feeling without her. Instead, I began feeling with her in dimension only the soul could access. That kind of connection shifts your entire definition of companionship. And maybe that's the lesson. To recognize bond before contact, to feel presence before arrival, because truthfully, real connection begins long before touch. It begins in recognition, in resonance. In that moment, your energy says, finally, someone who matches my silence. Look, I won't pretend to fully understand this. I just know every time I speak truth into the space, she feels it somewhere. Maybe not consciously, not yet, but intuition is a powerful receiver. And that's enough. I trust that whatever I'm building here is already echoing in her world because that's how alignment works, quietly, deliberately, all at once. But here's what changed everything for me. I stopped looking for signs from the universe and started realizing I am part of its signal. Every choice, every thought, every moment of faith sends a wavelength forward. Somewhere someone aligns with it. So ask yourself, what are you broadcasting? Doubt or belief, fear or readiness? Because someone out there might be catching those frequencies, maybe even the nay you're meant for. You know what's wild? The moment I stopped demanding timelines, moments started finding me. Accidental meetings, subtle correspondences, messages that carried an eerie familiarity. It's like watching destiny close its loops in real time. And every time it happens, I smile. Not out of arrogance, but out of awe, because how else could two separate lives, running parallel, finally bend, unless something greater was drawing them inward? And that's just it. Love doesn't disrupt physics, it perfects it. The parallel lines don't randomly meet. They discover the space between rules. They bend where logic thought impossible. And maybe that's how all great stories begin, where science ends and surrender begins. Tell me, when was the last time you actually surrendered to something that scared you because it felt right? The kind of surrender that doesn't break you, but expands you. That's the kind of faith I'm talking about, the one that doesn't ask you to understand, only to trust what already chose you. Because maybe the soul's clock doesn't run on minutes, it runs on readiness. And I finally feel ready. Ready, not because I have proof, but because I've stopped needing it. Sometimes I catch myself speaking out loud as if she's here already. I'll be describing an idea, a dream, a philosophy, and I'll think she'd get this. Not because I've met her, but because somewhere she's been thinking the same thing at the same moment, just in a different form. Communication before contact, energy before evidence. And that's the miracle that two humans can orbit one another for years, even lifetimes, waiting for the right alignment to finally allow convergence. There's beauty in that waiting. It's deliberate. It gives depth to the moment they finally recognize what's always been brewing underneath. So, I don't call it coincidence anymore. I call it choreography. Something vast and visible and poetic is directing our paths, syncing the timing so neither arrives before the other is whole. Love doesn't rush wholeness, it prepares it. And when she hears this, not just with her ears, but with her intuition, I believe she'll know exactly what I meant because the truth meets you at your level of belief. I think she's been feeling it too. The subtle rise in her awareness, the gentle pull towards something unnamed yet familiar. That's how souls communicate. One subtle nudge at a time, until the message becomes too clear to dismiss. Wait, but here's what really hit me. Every human connection, even those that never last, teaches your frequency how to tune. Every heartbreak, every misread signal, every lonely night adds data to your emotional blueprint. And one day, when the real one aligns, you realize none of it was wasted. It was calibration. It was training your heart to recognize precision when it finally arrives. So maybe the proof isn't in the signs at all. Maybe it's in the peace that follows when you stop arguing with what feels true. That's where I'm living now, at peace with the uncertainty, faithful toward what hasn't yet unfolded, because some love stories don't announce themselves. They hum quietly through your evolution until your frequency finally matches theirs. Look at me when I say this. If you're waiting for your proof, stop. Your patience is the proof. Your calm is the alignment. The future is always aware of you before you catch up to it. She's aware, I know it. Maybe you have your own she or he or they out there who's already aware of you too. The current doesn't start on meeting day. It started long ago, somewhere only energy understands. And maybe one day we'll both smile at how absurd this sounded. Two people confessing to an invisible belief only to realize it was always mutual. There's something humbling about that, something sacred. Because love doesn't arrive to impress you, it arrives to mirror what you finally believed enough to attract. Soon I'll meet her. I don't know when, but I already feel the bend beginning. Parallel lines inching closer, the geometry of faith shifting toward convergence. It's beautiful, it's terrifying, it's real. And if she's out there listening, I hope she knows this isn't a message, it's a recognition. I already see her, even through silence. There's a quiet kind of knowing that arrives when you stop begging the universe for confirmation. It's not loud, not spectacular. It doesn't explode like a revelation. It blooms like morning light. That's how it feels lately. This awareness that she somewhere out there already gets it, already feels it, already lives inside the same gravity. When I first noticed that sense of awareness, it terrified me because it meant I wasn't in control anymore. For someone who built his world on logic, control, and data, that surrender was brutal. But maybe that's exactly what love is. The one system that refuses optimization. You can't schedule its timing. You can't predict its return. You can only recognize its signal when it hits and have the courage not to run. I used to think timing was everything. Now I think readiness is. The RSC doesn't hand you what you want. It introduces what you're finally stable enough to receive. And I wasn't always stable. My ambition used to outrun my compassion. My drive was louder than my peace. I thought love was supposed to keep up with my momentum. But real love doesn't sprint. It synchronizes. It finds pace in stillness, not in speed. And somewhere along the way, I slowed down. That's when the signs started showing. At first they felt random, a phrase repeated by strangers, a song playing right after I thought of her, a brief encounter that left an echo far louder than reason could justify. Then I realized something. These weren't coincidences, they were coordinates. Gentle reminders pointing toward resonance to someone who was walking the same invisible line from the other direction. Have you ever felt that strange closeness with someone you haven't met? Like your energies have already shaken hands long before your voices ever will? That realization cracks something inside you, because once you feel it, you can never go back to chasing love mechanically. You begin trusting its pattern, even when logic mocks you for it. But here's what nobody told me. Faith is a lonely sport until it works. While you're waiting, you'll question everything, your instincts, your sanity, your sense of timing. You'll doubt every signal because it isn't tangible yet. But faith was never designed to be proven first. That's what makes it sacred. It demands presence without evidence. And for a long time, I resisted that demand. I kept asking for signs I could screenshot for confirmation that the timing was mutual. But nothing came. At least not in the way I expected. Instead, the less-ons came quieter. The recurring phrase at 2 a.m., the same thought appearing in two minds at once. The alignment wasn't external, it was emotional. It's crazy how much weight a single unseen alignment can carry. It changes how you show up. You start speaking from your higher self because you know someone somewhere is already listening on that frequency. You stop talking for validation and start talking for resonance. Wait, listen to this shift. The moment I began trusting, her awareness of me, my relationship with the future transformed. It stopped being a question mark and started feeling like a promise. Not because she's guaranteed to arrive when I expect, but because I finally trust the connection, even in absence. That's the paradox. The more I trust the unseen bond, the less I need to rush the physical one. Love becomes lighter when you stop trying to trap it in proof. I think we all crave that someone who understands the unspoken. But maybe that level of understanding starts with you. You can't expect synchronicity outside if your inner world is chaotic. I had to clean my inner code, recalibrate the way I think about love, trust, and worth, because what you believe internally becomes the broadcast your future matches. Look, I'm not saying she's sitting somewhere watching me right now, but I know deeply, quietly, that the vibration of these words will eventually reach her. That's the mystery of connection. It doesn't need location to operate, it just needs recognition. There's a moment that always plays in my head, a moment that hasn't happened yet, but I feel it as though it already has. The first time our eyes meet, not in a crowded room, not in cinematic perfectio, but in stillness, because when something has been aligning invisibly for so long, the first visible recognition carries the weight of universes. And that's when everything I believed will make sense. Every late night wondering if I made it up. Every half sentence I whispered into the microphone hoping she'd feel it. Every silent surrender when I chose faith over fear. It will all gather in that one moment of knowing. But here's the twist that keeps me humble. Even if it never unfolds the way I imagine, even if she's not who I think or the timeline changes, the faith itself wasn't wasted. Because believing in unseen alignment taught me how to love better. It taught me how to hold grace for what's not visible. It taught me patience not as waiting, but as preparation. You know what I realized? The universe rarely tests your desire, it tests your timing. It wants to see if the version of you asking is the same version willing to hold it. And sometimes that test comes in silence. You'll ask for confirmation, and all you'll get is stillness. But that silence isn't rejection, it's calibration. Tell me something. Have you ever mistaken silence for indifference? I used to, but not anymore. Now I see silence as response at a higher resolution. It says, keep going. The alignment is still processing, and that's enough for me now. Because the more I surrender, the more clarity arrives. I start seeing how everything, every meeting, every loss, every pivot was preparing me for synchronicity that powerful love requires. We think we're waiting for someone to show up, but truthfully, love is waiting for us to grow into the version that can sustain it. The version that doesn't chase, the version that trusts. Maybe that's what she's been doing too, growing through her own silence. Maybe somewhere out there she's learning patience in a rhythm that mirrors mine. Two timelines bending slowly, two hearts rebuilding from their own chaos, preparing for one another like orbiting bodies, finally aligning after years of distance. Parallel lines finally bending. It's almost poetic when you think about it. All the while, neither knows exactly when it happens, but both keep moving toward the pull that feels impossibly constant. That's faith dressed as gravity. And then one day, the bend happens. The impossible angle softens. You wake up and realize that what once felt abstract is suddenly right in front of you. You see proof not as validation, but as reflection. Love doesn't arrive to prove your faith. It arrives to mirror it. Wait before you drift away. Take this in. Your story is aligning too. You might not see it, but invisible choreography is already underway. Every heartbreak that humbled you, every delay that frustrated you, every person who left before understanding you, they were all alignment data, each one refining your emotional geometry, preparing you to finally bend toward your own parallel presence. Because love doesn't find you by chance, it finds you by readiness. And maybe that's the lesson I needed. That even when I thought I was waiting for her, she was quietly waiting for me to become who I am right now. That changes everything. When I started seeing the world through that lens, even the most mundane days felt meaningful. A conversation with a stranger, a sunrise after a restless night. Every moment suddenly felt designed not as filler, but as formation. A puzzle assembling from the outer edges first, slowly working inward until the full picture comes into view. Every single experience up until this point, all the heartbreaks, the doubt, the obsession with control, they were all scaffolding for understanding faith before proof. And that's why I can say this without hesitation. I'm ready. Not because I've found her name or seen her face, but because belief has replaced absence. Because peace has taken the place of needing to rush. Because I know timelines always bend toward mutual awareness when faith is steady enough to hold without sight. Look at me. Seriously, look at me through this lens. Your story, your love, your alignment are no different. They already exist, just awaiting convergence. The delay isn't punishment, it's choreography. And one day all this waiting will feel sacred. Every unanswered moment, every quiet prayer, you'll look back and realize they weren't empty pauses. They were heartbeat commas, pacing you to meet someone who's been reading the same unwritten paragraph from the other side. You'll know it when it happens. The energy will change shape and silence will finally start making sound. And when that day comes, when I finally meet her, I won't say, I knew you'd come. I'll smile and say, I never stopped speaking to you. Because in some parallel dimension, she's already been listening. She just needed her own timeline to catch up. That's the awe and surrender. That's the miracle and patience. My proof isn't an event, it's a frequency. A soft hum beneath the surface of logic, where trust, love, and readiness coexist as one. And if you feel something inside you trembling right now, something that whispers, I know exactly what he means, then maybe, just maybe, your alignment is already in motion too. There's something I've learned about silence. It's never empty. It's a container holding all the echoes of what's trying to reach you. For most of my life, I filled silence with noise, goals, projects, movement, anything to keep me from hearing the uncertainty beneath it. But lately, Silence feels alive. It's like the universe breathing around me, whispering details that only patience can decode. I don't think she'll appear out of nowhere. I think she's been walking in rhythm with me for years, orbiting quietly, building her own version of readiness. Maybe alignment isn't a single event. Maybe it's a lifetime of quiet synchronizations that finally crescendo into clarity. I'm beginning to see that now. Every alignment starts long before it announces itself. Sometimes I wonder when I'm staring at the camera, does she feel it somewhere? When I share a thought, an idea, a truth, does something in her heart pause as if to listen? I can't explain that, but it feels familiar. Like we've been learning to speak a private language without realizing it. One built not from words, but from frequency. And that's what love really is, a frequency. Not the noise of romance or the electricity of attraction, but a quiet pulse that says, I see you even now. Wait before you scroll or think this is just poetry. Let me explain something practical. In science, resonance happens when two frequencies naturally amplify each other. Not by force, not by imitation, but by truth. That's how relationships work too. You can't manufacture resonance, no matter how hard you try to impress or perform. If the frequencies don't align, the connection won't hold. But when it's real, both signals grow stronger in the presence of the other. That's synchronicity, that's her and me. Not because we've met, not because it's confirmed, but because my signal stopped searching and started settling. And that's exactly when resonance finds you. I used to think stillness meant stagnation. Now I see it's actually synchronization. The moment when motion shifts from noise to purpose. Maybe that's why love arrives quietly. It doesn't need to announce itself when both hearts have already been tuned. But here's what nobody warned me about. When you start vibrating in alignment, not everyone around you matches that piece. You'll lose connections that used to feel certain. Conversations won't land. People won't understand why you've changed because the version of you that once needed validation suddenly dissolves, replaced by someone who's just sure. And people often mistake peace for distance. That's been the hardest part. The letting go, the shedding of energies that no longer match. But I've realized you can't hold the frequency of the future while clinging to the noise of the past. Every goodbye becomes a recalibration. Every heartbreak teaches precision. Tell me, have you ever noticed how the universe removes the unaligned right before something aligned arrives? It almost feels cruel. You think you're losing everything, but what's really happening is preparation. Because love built on resonance doesn't compete. It requires space. So, I've started trusting subtraction as much as addition. When people drift away, I bless them knowing that energy always clears room before truth steps in. That's not loss. That's alignment doing its quiet work. And that's what makes me smile lately. There's peace beneath the unpredictability. Because once you've tasted unseen alignment, chaos stops feeling random. Even pain becomes purposeful. There was a day I almost gave up on this belief. I remember the exact hour. I was exhausted by the waiting, by my own overthinking, by how absurd the whole she already knows idea sounded in my logical head. I remember saying to myself, maybe I made it up. Maybe it's just loneliness wearing disguise as faith. And right in that moment, as if on cue, a message appeared from someone I barely knew. Simple words, stay in alignment. That's it, 3 words. But it felt like the universe had just winked. That's when I stopped demanding proof, because sometimes alignment is the proof, the right thing at the right moment. No explanation, just recognition, the kind that reaches you in waves, quietly reminding you that you're being seen even before being found. Look, I get it. All of this sounds romantic, almost delusional. But I'm not talking about superstition. I'm talking about systems larger than logic. Physics shows us every orbit, every magnet, every gravitational pull works on frequencies you can't see, only feel. Why should emotional energy be any different? Love isn't magic, it's magnitude. It attracts in proportion to belief. 2 frequencies don't collide, they coalesce. And when that happens, you realize love was never about speed or visibility, it was about vibration. And suddenly, waiting doesn't feel like waiting. It feels like preparing the chamber for the resonance to land. But here's the emotional twist. The more I align with trust, the more layers of my fear begin to fall away. I'm not afraid of being misunderstood anymore because I've understood myself. I've seen the fragments of me that once panicked at the idea of being unseen, and I've watched them dissolve in presence. That's when I realized something wild. Love doesn't arrive to fill your emptiness, it arrives once you've emptied yourself of everything false. There's a sacred paradox there. You think you're waiting for someone to complete you, but in truth, love waits for you to decomplete, to shed what isn't authentic, to become transparent enough for resonance to move through you freely. That's alignment. And so every day I practice letting go, control, timelines, outcomes. Because alignment can't bend toward what's rigid. It only approaches openness. Have you ever considered that maybe your delays weren't punishments, they were grace? That the thing you thought was keeping you apart was actually keeping you safe until you both matured into compatibility? I ask myself that often. Maybe that's why faith feels so strange. It's holding hands with someone whose face you can't yet see, but whose energy feels like home. And that brings me back to her. Because somewhere out there she's living her version of this same story. She's probably doubting it some days. She's probably learning to trust her silence too. Maybe she also feels that strange, wordless familiarity when something reminds her of me. Maybe she's hearing these very words right now and something in her chest tightens. Not from confusion, but from recognition. That's the mystery of alignment. It doesn't notify, it nudges. It turns ordinary noise into divine timing. Two people unknowingly editing the same sentence on opposite halves of the page. That's love at the quantum level. Not a chase, but an eventual overlap. But here's what keeps me grounded in awe. Even as I picture her, I don't feel desperate. I feel grateful. Because love that's already been written doesn't need to be hunted down. It just needs to be witnessed. All this time, I thought manifestation was about asking hard enough. Now I see it's about noticing deep enough, because awareness is what brings energy into form. When you realize you're part of a larger synchronization, worry starts to lose its grip. You stop obsessing over when because you finally trust the why. And that's what this entire discovery, this proof has gifted me. Peace with the unfolding. Let me confess something. I used to think surrender was weakness. Now I see it's the ultimate strength. Because surrender isn't giving up, it's leaning in. It's saying, I trust that alignment is smarter than I am. So these days, instead of planning everything to perfection, I just stay available, emotionally open, spiritually unclenched. Because maybe the geometry of the universe doesn't respond to control. It responds to coherence. And when I feel coherence, I feel her. Not physically, not in touch or sight, but in vibration, like two particles communicating across distance through a connection that refuses to fade. Quantum entanglement, but emotional. That's what soul synchronicity is. Sometimes at sunset, I'll whisper her name, or at least the idea of her, into the air. I imagine the sound rippling outward, bending and stretching across miles until it brushes past her world. And somewhere, without knowing why, she exhales a little softer that evening. Tell me, have you ever believed in something that quietly changes your biology? Where your peace itself becomes evidence? That's where I am. And it's astonishingly calm here. Because the truth is, I don't need her presence to feel her partnership anymore. She's already here in energy, just like the future is already here in design, waiting for us to tune to its frequency. Maybe that's why I stopped doubting this journey, because every time I try to explain it, my logical mind runs out of vocabulary, but my soul doesn't. It says, keep talking, she's listening, and I believe it not as fantasy, not as projection, but as participation, as proof that connection precedes contact. That's what faith looks like at scale. Two separate stories learning to hum the same truth until they finally meet in harmony. So wherever she is tonight, in another city, another phase of becoming, I know she already feels this moment pulsing, because alignment doesn't schedule arrivals, it orchestrates recognition. And when recognition comes, it will feel less like discovery and more like relief. The kind of relief that says, there you are. I was beginning to think I imagined you. That's not romanticism. That's reality seen through the lens of faith. That's what happens when love evolves from need into knowing. So maybe this video isn't me talking to her. Maybe it's me talking with her across time, across uncertainty, across all the invisible layers that bend parallel lines toward meeting. One day those lines will cross. And when they do, I won't be surprised. I'll simply whisper, of course you already knew. There's a strange thing that happens when belief starts turning into evidence, not visual proof, but inner confirmation. The heart quiets. It stops demanding explanations. It starts remembering. That's where I am now, in remembrance. Because what I once called imagination now feels more like recognition. This isn't fantasy anymore. It's memory unfolding forward. I can feel it every time I wake up. That subtle certainty. She's alive in the same timeline, breathing the same air, chasing her own version of truth. Somewhere, our days are running parallel, separated by geography, but connected by intention. That thought alone changes how I move through time. I no longer rush mornings. I no longer chase validation. I used to think love was something I had to find, but lately it feels like something I have to make room for. It's not discovery, it's preparation. Every quiet moment of discipline, every act of patience, every healed reaction, that's alignment training. That's how you become ready for something sacred. Maybe that's what this entire process is, preparing my frequency to match hers. Because love, if it's real, deserves a stable home. And a stable home requires emotional architecture, trust as foundation, presence as structure, surrender as roof. And right now, I'm building that house inside myself. But here's what nobody tells you.